Hi, how you doing, Rabbi Friedman?
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
I hear you have a good thought to share.
It's half a thought, and I thought maybe you have the other half. So
Match made in heaven.
let's find out. Um, Mitalmida Yesemakulam, for my students, I learn most of all. So I got a really good question the other day, in seminary. Actually, I was teaching in seminary. One of the students asked a question. We were talking about, as we often do, we often learn about the patriarchs and the matriarchs, and we hold them up as models of humanity, how to be, And in this particular instance, we're talking about their level of faith, and that even during trying times, they were not affected. They had such faith that they were able to sort of transcend the situation. So one of the students asked a question. I'm not going to tell you what the question she asked is. I'm going to tell you my answer, and then I'll go back, I'll tell you the question. And then I want to hear your answer. You know that story? I'm sure you do. About, I believe it took place during World War II in Poland when the bombs were going off with the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe. Now, there's a couple of stories about it. There's one about somebody nearby who wasn't particularly religious screaming out Shema Yisrael. That's one story. But I believe there's another story where the Rebbe commented, and that's what I want to really focus on, the Rebbe's comment that I believe the Lashon something like Afal Pishu Basar Kodesh Basarhu, something to that effect. Are you familiar somewhat with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even a goof Kodesh is a goof.
Right. So, and it was an explanation of why, I guess he jumped. He was startled, right? So I said to this young lady, the masters of psychological torture were the KGB. They were the experts. They studied it on purpose, and they could not psychologically break the previous Rebbe. They tried. He was public enemy number one, and they tried to psychologically break him, and they could not. And that upset them. They were very upset about that. So we know that he had the ability. In fact, he writes journals about his imprisonment. And one can, obviously we don't know, but one can only assume that he shared that information as somewhat of an inspiration for us, how to deal with our own adversity. So there is such a concept of being psychologically unbreakable. And yet, I guess I'm making this connection, and maybe the Rebbe explicitly made the connection, and I'm unaware of it, but I'm making the connection that even though mentally he was above it, and presumably emotionally he was above it, because in Chabad we know emotions come from cognition, but there was nothing he could do about the fact that physically a body is a body, even a holy body. That was my answer. Okay, so you want to know what the question was? This young lady asked, yes, they were able to transcend all types of adversity, but trauma is also in the body. Are you telling me they were able to transcend that? And I thought for a second, and I said, you know what? No, I don't think so. And I told her this story with this comment. Even though it was a holy body, it was a body. And I said that only increases my awe for what these human beings were able to achieve. Because if you were to tell me that in Atzilus, in the higher realms, in the godly worlds, in the spiritual, in the heavens, where souls fly around, that they had no fear, that wouldn't impress me. But if you told me they came down here and they were subject to the conditions of being embodied, and they actually had the same neurological to use a word that I don't know what it means, the same neurological responses that any human being is hardwired for. And in kol zeh, notwithstanding that, they were able to stay above it mentally and emotionally. That's what impresses me, and that's something that, on at least on my level, obviously relatively speaking, I can aspire to a me'ain, to some semblance of that. So that's half a thought, because I'm not totally confident in it, but I'm very interested in it, and I think there's more there, and I bet you have more. And I just want everyone watching to know I'm springing this on you without preparation.
So they were referring.
No pressure to be profound.
The question was referring to something that happened in the life of one of the patriarchs, or matriarch.
The particular context was Joseph being estranged from his brothers and everything he went through, slavery, imprisonment, that stuff. But it could have been anything. Could have been anything. Could have been Jacob's brother wanted to murder him, you know.
So I think our teacher, Rabbi Yoel, should be well. I think he just recovered from corona at the age of 90. He once explained it like this. What does it mean? The body is a holy body, but it's still a body. And therefore, it can do things that don't seem so holy. See, it's used as an explanation. Like when God told Avraham that he's going to have a child, Avraham laughed. And it's not held against him. There's no criticism. Because his laughing was not a lack of faith. It was the body. Although it was a holy body, but it's still a body. So Rabbi Yoel, our teacher, asked, what does that mean? If it's holy, it's holy. What does it mean? It's holy, but it's still capable of unholiness? It doesn't make sense. So his explanation was, godliness is sometimes revealed and godliness is sometimes concealed. The soul of a tzaddik is revealed godliness. His teachings, his statements, his wisdom, his inspiration, it's pure godliness. And anyone with a little intelligence can see it and recognize it and appreciate it. But the body, although it's also holy, its holiness is not revealed to where the average guy can see it. So you can walk past Avraham on the street and you have no idea who you're looking at, because the body does not reveal its godliness. I guess in the same way that the world, the created world, is godly, but it hides its godliness. And it's our job to reveal it. Except that in the world, the godliness hides behind ungodliness. Whereas in the tzaddik, the body hides the godliness only in that you don't see it, but you don't see anything negative either. That would be an additional concealment, a distraction, like the story of David HaMelech and Bathsheba. There was a distraction there meant to hide the holiness of the event, the birth of Mashiach, and so on. So there is nothing ungodly about a godly body. It's just not revealed. So we can misunderstand. So
Now
the jealousy of Yosef's brothers.
Yeah. You're describing how we observe others.
And we observe holy bodies.
Yeah. Can you apply that to ourselves, though? Can you apply that to how we observe the events of our own lives and our own reactions?
Yeah. So first, the distinction, the physical damage of trauma to the body. In human beings, in the average human being, you can't separate that from the soul, from the spirit, from the personality. If there's trauma in the body, there's trauma in the heart, and there's trauma in the mind. It may be primarily in the body, but it's a closed system.
Mhm.
So a little hole in the body can create a big hole in the neshama. Whereas with the tzaddik, whatever damage there is strictly in the body. It has no bearing on the soul, on the spirit, on the mood. So a tzaddik is not given to bad moods, to despair, to none of that, even as the body is suffering.
Mhm. So he doesn't say, "I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I didn't have my morning coffee."
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry, I snapped at you. I quit smoking yesterday. Yeah.
Or even, I'm in so much pain I can't talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he says in Tanya, that a tzaddik looks at his body like some kind of baggage that he has to carry around and take care of.
Mm-hmm.
So he feeds his body because the body needs to be fed. So when there's harm to the body, he's sympathetic. He's like, oh, that poor body, he's in pain again.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what happened with the previous Rebbe, the full story there, the bombs were falling everywhere. There was no shelter, and they were running from one place to another, literally with bombs going off a block away. And the Rebbe said to the people who were with him, it was a large crowd of people, he said, I'm not afraid at all. There's nothing to be afraid of. And then a bomb went off really close, and the Rebbe's hand jumped. And they looked at the Rebbe like, I thought you weren't afraid.
Uh-huh.
So the Rebbe said that was not fear, that was startled. So it's a reflex, not a fear.
Mm-hmm.
So even the reflex, which is a completely physical, like you said, neurological reaction, even that is holy, but we don't see the holiness.
Mm-hmm. Last week in the Parsha, Jacob has to go down to Egypt to reunite with the family, and he doesn't want to leave the Holy Land. He doesn't want to go to Egypt. And it wasn't just leaving the Holy Land. Egypt was a nasty place, and he didn't want to go down there. And so Hashem tells him, Al tira avdi Yankiv, my servant Jacob, don't be afraid. And Rashi, the commentary there, says, why did Hashem tell him this? Lefisha haya meitzer, because he was pained. So there's a whole sikha from the Rebbe that talks about a lot of things, but one element there is, hold on a second, was he afraid or was he in pain? The verse says Hashem told him, don't be afraid. Rashi says the reason Hashem told him that is because he was in pain. So which one is it? Because there's a difference, like you were just saying. Don't be afraid, but when the bomb blows up a block away, there's some wiring in the human body, even a holy body, that's going to jump, right? Okay. So here's how I understood it. Pain is a sensation. Well, it's not a feeling like an emotion. We misuse the word feeling. We say, I feel hungry, I feel tired, I feel cold. Those aren't feelings. Love is a feeling. Fear is a feeling. In fact, all feelings are either some flavor of love or some flavor of fear. But when we say, I feel, tired, I feel, hungry, feel cold, I feel hot, those aren't feelings. Those are sensations. Sensations are in the body.
A nervous person is not an emotional person.
Correct, right. Right. Your nervousness is not your emotions coming out. It's your body reacting to stimuli poorly or overreacting to stimuli. Correct, yeah. So sensations are in the body. Emotions are in the heart. And they come from the brain. So here's somebody Jacob is experiencing presumably pain and fear, a sensation and an emotion. Hashem doesn't tell him don't be in pain, because you can't tell somebody not to have a sensation. If the stimulus triggers a certain sensation, you're going to feel it. It's like I can't put chocolate on your tongue and tell you, don't let it taste good. It's going to taste good. I can tell you, don't fall in love with it. Don't decide, I have to do everything possible to get this taste as often as possible again. That would be an emotion, becoming emotionally attached to the sensation. But I can't put the chocolate on your tongue and tell you, don't let it taste good to you. Although there are stories of great tzaddikim like the Alter Rebbe who couldn't taste because he got rid of it. So that would presumably be an example where even that bit of physicality he was able to overcome. But the point is, even the physicality that a tzaddik cannot overcome, and if a tzaddik can't overcome that physicality, how much more so regular people cannot overcome that physicality. Yet at the same time, Hashem can insist, but don't emotionally react. So I would never tell you that your trauma shouldn't cause you pain, because not only would it be cruel, it would be foolish. Like, you can't tell somebody to not have the reflex. It's like a doctor hits your knee with the mallet and you kick. Don't kick. I can't not kick, right? But you can tell somebody, or Hashem can at least, al tira, don't be afraid. Don't let it turn into an emotion. I think, it's very gratifying just to have the awareness that you can be in pain and not afraid. Just to be aware that they're two different things. And B, I think that it gives us more of a productive focus of what to work on. I don't need to work on my pain. I probably can't work on my pain. I think they say time heals all wounds. In other words, pain will go away with time, and time takes time. But I can work on my fears. I can work on my emotional reactions to my pain.
I remember the first time I heard an older chassid speaking in Yiddish, saying, I hurt. He was describing something that happened back in Russia. He said, I hurt a leg.
A leg.
Vegeton afus.
We don't know whose foot.
My foot, your foot. What's the difference? In other words, there was a certain detachment that he had to his physical pain. That's the body's pain, not my pain.
And this is a regular chassid, not a rebbe.
Right. And I guess if you live with a lot of pain, that's what you have to do. You have to disassociate. So of course you feel the pain, you don't identify with it. You don't become the pain. The person says, I'm in pain. That's not good. You should not be in pain. The head hurts, the back hurts, the leg hurts, but not you. You stay above. That's just necessary. I think anybody who has had a lot of pain does that just to survive.
I mean, they say that it's automatic. We don't even choose it.
Yes. It's a survival technique.
Mm-hmm.
You have to disassociate. But with the tzaddikim, they do it voluntarily. They do it by volition. So the Alter Rebbe didn't taste the salt or whether the food was too salty or not salty enough.
And by the way, he wouldn't have tasted it if it were too sweet also.
Right.
Right. So
just salt. Right.
Yeah.
So what did he do? Kill his taste buds?
No.
He was indifferent. He was so indifferent to whether it was salty or not that he didn't notice. So he wasn't killing anything. He wasn't damaging himself. The previous Rebbe's father was saying a mimer, and the kids outside under the window were making noise. So the Rebbe turned off his hearing. After the mimer, he didn't understand why he doesn't hear what's going on.
He forgot that he turned it off.
Right. And then he realized he had turned it off, so he turned it back on. That's a tzaddik. That's not even your average tzaddik. That's beyond.